Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Rudcast, where we have a question from a wonderful subscriber of mine named Devon. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Devon, D-A-V-O-N. Devon has 3 questions, and they're absolutely fantastic questions, but let's start with the first one. What is the best way to market your self-published book on Amazon? The answer is don't. And I don't mean to skirt the question here, but there are a lot of things you can do on Amazon. For example, Amazon SEO by using the proper keywords, proper categories, etc., and Amazon ads. And those things can give you a bit of results, and I definitely recommend doing them, but they're not the best ways to market your book. There's really one simple answer to the best way to market your book. Give it away to 1,000 people and see if it spreads. That's it. People don't want to believe that it's that simple, but if you give your book away to 1,000 people and it doesn't spread on its own, that means it's mediocre. And there's nothing wrong with a mediocre book. Most books are mediocre, but there's really nothing you can do to make a mediocre book explode. You can do lots of little tactics. You can throw money at it. You can be really loud and really markety and salesy, and you might sell a few hundred, a few thousand copies, but you're never going to have any real impact. So your time is better spent making your book more word of mouth friendly. Does your book look good? Does it make people look good when they talk about it? For example, one of the biggest successes in nonfiction over the past decade, or really even beyond, is Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Why does that book do so well? One, it's really well written, it looks really good. Mark Manson has built an audience, all those things help. But the real reason it does so well is because when you tell someone you have to read the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, it subtly tells them that you don't give a fuck, which means you're cool, which means they could be cool too. And everyone wants to be cool. Nobody wants to give a fuck. And you want your book to have that same effect. You want it to make people look cool. You want it to make people look smart. You want it to make people look attractive, rich, whatever it is that people want to feel. They want to feel like a good person. Another great example of this is how to be anti-racist, right? Everyone, well, maybe not everyone, but almost everyone wants to be anti-racist, fortunately, these days. So they want to tell people, I read this book. You should read this book. We should be good people together. And it doesn't have to be as overt as this. You know, if you're, for something like fiction, it might be you're telling people that, you know, I'm a fantasy nerd and I had to read this, right? Or my favorite author said you had to read this. People read because of word of mouth. So you want to facilitate word of mouth in whatever way possible. And the easiest way to do that is to give books away, give books away, give books away. So focus on 2 things. 1, how word of mouth friendly is my book? And 2, have I given away at least 1,000 copies? If you've done both of those things, and they're much, much, much harder than it sounds, you will have success. But there's a reason that probably only 1% of people listening to this will do both of those things and succeed. So keep working on making your book more viral, more spreadable, more attractive to talk about. And this is why I highly recommend people test their ideas early on, because you can try 10, 20, 50 different angles of your book in little tests, 500-word tests, and see if those spread. Speaking of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, that actually started as a bit of a manifesto, an article that I have to imagine has been read millions of times now, and I know was read at least tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of times right after Mark Manson wrote it. So that was a sign that this idea is word of mouth friendly for a variety of reasons, and I need to turn this into a book. So you want to keep writing and writing and writing until you hit that, until your alarm buzzes in the middle of your recording. I'm going to leave that in there just to show you how this whole process is about making mistakes. It's about trying things that might not work until finally you hit that one thing that does. Mark Manson is one of the most successful nonfiction authors of the past, 50 years. And he only hit that viral article after probably 15 years or so of trying things. I'm not saying it has to take you 15 years to write your book, but for you to have a massive success, it might. But the more little tests you throw out to the market, the higher chance you have of hitting a masterpiece. So keep trying things. Another really important thing is to build an audience for yourself and your ideas. These are the most effective things you can do to market your book. Number one, build an audience for yourself and your ideas. Build a brand. And the best way to build a brand is to have an email list as the central driver of your brand. Because if you have an email list, you have direct access to people's inboxes and they've given you permission to tell them, hey, I wrote something. But don't market your book directly, just market whatever it is that those people want. Most of you know this because most of you are on my email list. I don't talk about my book almost ever. I wrote a book on self-publishing, but I podcast about self-publishing. I email you about self-publishing. I talk about traditional publishing. I talk about building a business around a book. I market around the book and I give people what they want. Don't market your book directly, market yourself and market things around the book. That is the best way to market your book, because if you have someone's email for life, you can market very gently to them. You don't have to hard sell them. If you have an advertisement, you have to sell that person within seconds. If I have your attention for days, months, years on my email list, I can be much more gentle. I can sell you other things. I can not sell you things. I can just connect with you and I can build trust over time. And that is the best way to sell books over time. Ads can be good short term, but typically the only ads that will see direct return are Amazon ads, and they're going to be pretty minimal. You might make a few $100 a month if you're lucky, but by building a brand of hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, you can impact tens, hundreds, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. Build a brand around your book. Build an email list. Social media can be great too, but it's secondary to email because you do not own your social media platform. The company you are using, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, owns the algorithm and they can change it at any time. And you can have 100,000 Facebook followers and it becomes meaningless overnight. I've heard this dozens and dozens of times. So build a platform that you own. Don't market your book directly, market the ideas around it. If you're selling a book on winemaking, or if you're selling a book on winemaking, you can have a newsletter that gives people the best wines to buy because people who are interested in making wine are interested in buying wine. Then you're not marketing your book directly. You can say, here are my 3 favorite wines of this week. But I'm also making this other wine, and if you want to do it yourself, buy my book. You can just do it in the PS. It doesn't have to be, a blatant sales pitch. Give people value around your topic, things related to it. You could talk about wine-related trips. You can write a funny story about you getting drunk by making wine that was too strong. It doesn't matter. Whatever your tribe of people might want to hear, whatever would inspire them, whatever would make them feel something, whatever would make them laugh, cry, whatever would teach them something. Share things around your book. To sum that up, what's the best way to market your self-published book on Amazon? Don't focus on marketing on Amazon. Focus on marketing yourself. Focus on marketing ideas around your book. And this does go for if you want to, say, get media attention. Direct promotions for your book don't work that well. If you email the New York Times and say, will you promote my book? They will not do it. They will not return your email. If you email a reporter, an editor at the New York Times and sell an angle around your book, so for example, my client Trevor Krause, who wrote Ticket Lists, definitely look up his book if you haven't checked it out, was featured in the New York Times. He was featured in the Daily Beast and things like that. And we didn't email the editors and say, will you talk about my book? Will you review my book? We said, here's an interesting angle of something I've done. So he snuck into all these sporting events. So instead of saying I wrote a book where I snuck into sporting events, he said, hey, I snuck into this very timely event and I have a story about it. And then indirectly, he can mention the book afterwards. You get people in with an angle around your book. He could write a manifesto of why he did what he did. And then at the end, P.S., I wrote a book about this. Sell around the book. This works whether you're trying to get media attention, whether you're trying to get people's attention. People do not want to be yelled at, hey, buy my book. Nobody has ever bought a book because someone said, buy my book. They have bought a book because the book's been recommended to them. They have bought a book because you've earned their trust and then casually mentioned it. But do not market your book directly. Market yourself, market ideas, build a platform, build a tribe, be a person. And that's all. I'm actually going to leave Devon's other 2 questions for another episode because they are also wonderful questions, but not super related to this one, and they are similar to each other. So listen out for that on the next one. Make sure you are on my email list. If not, just check out rudbits.com. And if you want my personalized help with your book, I encourage you to apply for my coaching program or ghostwriting as well. If that's something you're interested in, just go to platypusbooks.com and click apply to get published. And take care, my friends.